It is MLB draft time in our Colorado Rockies draft-only franchise. Here for the 2028 MLB draft. Time is flying here in the franchise, and we've got another class to dissect. And with this class, we have the number 3, 35, and 40 picks, and then we pick again at 80. Those are our top 100 picks. Really, the goal, of course, in the MLB draft is really to nail your top 100 picks, and then after that, if you can find some value, all the power to you. So, this draft board that I have that we're going to quickly go through is basically broken up into 4 parts. The first part is the players that I'm considering at 3, and there are 4 players on this board. Now, I have not yet put these guys in order, and I'm not going to. I don't want to tip my hand here as to how I actually prefer these guys, but these are the 4 position players that I think are worth taking a look at number 3. And honestly, I think the only shot we have in this class of taking a good position player, that's why I'm not even really considering any pitchers at this spot. In addition to the fact that I don't think there's many good pitcher options, there's really only one who we'll get to in a minute. So we have Geraldo Feliz, who's guaranteed at least 74 overall and 84 potential. Just historically speaking, you gotta think he's probably gonna be on the low end of his ranges, but even if he is, that is a very good player who will not take long to reach the MLB. Will he make it to 3 though? Tough to say. He is the top ranked MLB player. Danny Parsons here. He is somebody who has a skill set that we're really missing in the franchise in terms of a guy who should come in, have good contact, at least against lefties, and the speed and the stealing will be in a really good spot. So good potential leadoff hitter, at least against lefties. Rico Salazar, just a very well-rounded skill set here. Switch hitter, good position versatility. Gonna hit against righties pretty well. Gonna have solid speed. Solid fielding, just the works. A very well-rounded player, but not gonna have a very high ceiling. Juan Ramirez, kind of similar here to Salazar, just not quite the speed profile you get from him. Could be a better defender though, but gonna be somebody who hits better against lefties, whereas Salazar projects to hit better against righties, at least for contact. Actually projects to be a better power hitter against lefties. So these are the 4 that I'm considering. Feliz, Salazar, and Ramirez, very likely to have 70 overall. Danny Parsons, not going to get there. Of course, his max is 68, but just he's in the mix because of his skill set, but very poor defender. You know, I said I don't want to tip my strategy, but I will say Danny Parsons is 4th out of these players. I just think the other players have more well-rounded skill sets. The second kind of part of our board is the relievers, the bullpen arms, and there are a lot of really good options here in this class. The 2 relievers, Julio Gomez, I think is going to be very good. Guaranteed strikeouts and walks per 9, excuse me, both going to be in the 80s, is absolutely insane. 73 is his lowest overall. 79 potential wouldn't be great, but if you can get just a little bit higher there in his ranges, then he's going to be very good. You have Omar Santiago, going to be more of a guy who starts in the 60s, but going to have really good strikeout stuff. Going to have really good slider, 4-seam, like the pitch mix, and he's a lefty. You have Maurice Hayes, who going to have very good hits and walks per 9. You love to see that. Break on his pitches is going to be great. A good 4-pitch mix here. You have Jimmy Blanco, going to throw pretty hard, good, well-rounded skill set. Don't love that his walks per 9 is his worst rating, but it's actually not going to be bad. So only 3 pitches here, but he's going to throw very hard. Phil Gorzelski, he has a minimum overall of 79 and a minimum potential of 87. In a class that had very little in the way of exciting discovery players, he is absolutely at the top of the rankings here. Has 4-seam changeup, running fast, and a 12-6 curve. Anthony Prado, I swear I scouted this guy, but apparently he didn't take. But either way, even without scouting him, the fact that his lowest overall is 71 and his lowest potential is 79, still good enough for me to take with one of our top 40 picks. And that is kind of the second portion of the board. I'm hoping we can take 2 of these guys in this class. Whether that's 2 in the top 40, or maybe because Phil Gorzelski's a discovery guy, we can get him even later down the board. Then you have just the discovery pitchers. That's the next. And out of them, there's clearly one guy who's above the rest, Chip Howe, who is a top-ranked player on our board. Very good walks per nine, very good stamina, pitch velocities in a solid spot as well. Gonna pitch more of a low to mid-90s fastball, though. And not going to be great at home runs, which is unfortunate, but should simulate well at the very least because of his walks per nine. Also has a very good chance of being in the 70s overall. Hopefully nobody else discovered him. After that, it definitely falls off a cliff. The only other guy that we have scouted to 100% is Soto. He is a lefty, but the per nines are just looking really bad, especially the walks per nine. You have Max Moses, another lefty, but another guy who's very long-term project. Strikeouts are in a really bad spot. You have Zachary Marquez, looks to be more of a high floor, low ceiling caliber of pitcher, but gonna have excellent break and stamina, so you love that. Archer Goff, we didn't scout him. He could be the best blend of, you know, maybe he could start in the 60s and have a potential, but because we didn't scout him, you really don't know at all. I mean, 36 to 69, nice, is just a massive gap, so maybe a late round flyer on him. Ramon Serna Ruiz, another guy who has maybe higher floor but lower ceiling. I mean, unlikely to be a potential. He'd have to come in at the very high end of his range. Much more likely to probably be kind of like a low B potential player, but throws really hard, has a ton of stamina. And then his per nines, although they're not, any of them aren't great, they're also at least kind of well-rounded. He's not going to have anything, you know, in the 20s off rip. And then we have the players that we discovered. Now, we did get a last week discovery for George Poe, who ends up being draft rank 32. I still don't know how good he's going to be. I think if we scouted him, he might drop. Just that offense doesn't look great to me unless he comes in at the very high end of his range, which of course is possible. Another switch hitter, really good fielder, decent speed, but still not probably somebody I'd take with a top 100 pick without having scouted him. And then these are the two guys that until week 14 were the best players we had discovered. We have Hugo Rico, who might hit lefties okay. That's about all I could say for him. And then you have Mike Jones, who at least has a skill set, but it's just fielding and speed. So, and doesn't have a high potential. So not the best discovery for position players unless George Poe ends up on the very high end of his ratings. If he's still there late in the class, we'll likely take a swing on him. But there is what we've got for the class. And with that being said, we are ready to hop into the draft and see who gets taken where in this class. Hoping for the closers to fall, but with them being so highly ranked by the MLB, I think we'd be lucky if any of them ended up at 40. Hoping there's still a couple options left at 35 at the very least. But let's get the draft underway with the number 1 pick. Washington Nationals are on the clock and they select Geraldo Feliz. He does not make it to our pick. Definitely was somebody that would have been heavily considered at number 3 should he have made it. Just, you're very confident that he's going to be an MLB caliber player with coming in at 74, 84 as his minimums. That's a solid pick. Maybe not what you want from a number 1 overall pick in every class, but this class just did not have much in the way of exciting talent at the top. That's why I had so many closers at the top of the board, and one goes here at number 2 to the Cubs. The one guy that we didn't scout, or I guess one of 2 that we didn't scout from the closer class because he was 19 and it would have taken 2 weeks to scout him. And that puts the Rockies on the clock. And this pick really comes down to Rico Salazar or Juan Ramirez. Juan hits better against lefties, both for contact and for power. Going to have a very big arm that, although he's listed as just a catcher here, I think could allow him to be a successful outfield player. And an outfield guy that has catcher versatility would be a major boon to the team. His vision won't be great, but his discipline's not going to be too bad off the rip. And of course, going to hit lefties pretty dang well. Doesn't have the speed or the stealing, but at a corner outfield spot, you maybe don't always need that kind of stuff. But he does have the arm to be a successful outfielder. And then you have Rico Salazar, switch hitter. Both of these guys are 18 years old. Both have excellent size. Rico Salazar, he has better speed by a mile, so gonna actually be able to maybe play center field successfully. And just a very well-rounded skill set. There's not much that's gonna be bad about Rico Salazar's game. The only thing that's likely to come in the 40s is vision and maybe reaction. Everything else 50 plus across the board. So which of these two players is the right fit? I think somebody who can play catcher is a little bit rare, but ultimately the decision that I'm going to make is going to come down to one key factor. And with the number 3 pick in the 2028 amateur draft, the Colorado Rockies select Rico Salazar, the center field switch hitting player. Ultimately, what put Salazar ahead of Juan Ramirez is injury risk. I think they were so closely rated. I was just looking for something to separate them. And Juan Ramirez, we've seen average injury risk be pretty dang low in this game. And Rico Salazar will not be an injury risk. I think he comes with kind of just built-in position flexibility where we would have had to make it happen for one. We would have had to add left field or third base or something as an extra position for him. But with Rico, he's already able to play all the outfield spots as well as second base. He also adds a switch hitting bat, which was not the case here for Ramirez. He's just a righty bat. We have a lot of righty bats on the team. We have a lot of guys who hit better against lefties on the team. So I think Salazar, despite the fact that getting somebody who had catcher and outfield versatility would have been very cool for the franchise, I think Salazar's skill set is just a little bit better. And adding speed too. I think speed definitely helps. There's not a ton of that here on the team. It's not going to be elite speed by any means, but it's going to be solid for sure. So that's the first pick here in the class. And let's see if any more of our relievers get sniped. We do get a reliever to go, just not the one that we were thinking. It looks like the Giants will get a guy who's going to be a very good reliever to start. He's just not going to be somebody that grows at all. But those per nines do look pretty nice. Juan Ramirez does go to the Boston Celtics. That's been more than once in this series for sure. The Boston is picked one of the guys that we almost drafted here in the first round. So Boston, maybe down the line, could be a team to watch out for as their players that they draft continue to get better. Danny Parsons here goes to the Braves, somebody who I think has really good potential to be a leadoff caliber hitter down the line, just not a good enough defender to be a shortstop at all. Maybe he can eventually play second base, but probably going to have to DH for you. But the speed, the base running skills, the contact and the play skills are all there for Parsons. Also going to be a decently long-term project, as he's likely to come in, low 60s, maybe high 50s overall to start. At pick 30, we have a division rival taken what our scouts said was the best player in the class. Maurice Hayes, guaranteed at least 78 overall and 87 potential. Should be a big-time player for the division rivals. And you hate to see the Dodgers adding good talent. And just like you predict, as soon as the first round comes to a close, the relievers are going to start to fly. I really liked Julio Gomez, was hoping he would make it to us at 35. Just that combination of strikeouts and walks, both guaranteed to be in the 80s, was a combination that I really, really liked. And Omar Santiago off the board as well. Good velocity, good strikeouts per 9. So we still have a good selection of closers available to us here in this spot. Do we take Jimmy Blanco? 72, 84 is his minimum. Got to be good hits per 9. He's going to throw very hard. Only a 3-pitch mix here. You probably add a slider to this forte, but excellent velocity and break. Pretty well-rounded per 9s. Walks per 9 is his lowest, but they'll be at least in the 50s. I think we try and see if Gorzelski lasts just because he's a discovery player. So it's probably between Blanco and Prado here. Prado, a lefty, another guy who's going to throw out hard. He has a 4-pitch mix here. 4-seamer, sinker, curveball, slider. Strikeouts are excellent. Walks, hits, all excellent. Who do you go, Jimmy Blanco or Anthony Prado? Both throw pretty hard. Although Blanco has the chance to throw 99. That's tempting. Prado, the strikeouts are going to be absolutely excellent. The control's terrible with him. It's actually pretty good with Blanco. I think it's a very tricky decision here. But with the number 35 pick in the 2028 amateur draft, the Colorado Rockies select Jimmy Blanco. I think the control is what really separated Blanco for me from Prado. Prado 26-40. Also the fact that we have him scouted, so we have his ratings a little bit tighter, not much tighter, and Prado would go the very next pick. So I was hoping there would be a chance we could maybe get both. I'm not going to be able to swing it this time, unfortunately. And I knew it was a long shot that we would have any of these guys last to 40. They just, especially if they're good, like these guys are, they go off the board very, very quickly as soon as the first round comes to a close, and 3 straight relievers here. Now at 40, this one really comes down to 2 players. There are 2 guys that are top 10 on our board that we have fully scouted. And do we go with Gorzelski or do we go with Howe? Now, Gorzelski, guaranteed to be at least 79 overall with 87 potential, is absolutely insane. It also comes with the risk that that just might not be true. Sometimes if something looks too good to be true, it can be. I don't know if that's the case with Gorzelski, but it could be. Now, another thing with Gorzelski is I think there's a really good chance no one else has discovered him. At least no one else that has picked since the opening of the first round. Of course, there are still teams that have picks after this, so we do risk him going if we don't select him here. But with Chip Howe, I just think this is our only chance in the draft to get a good starter. I don't think he's as good. He's not as good of a starting prospect as Gorzelski is a closing prospect, but he is somebody who could start in the 70s right away as a starting pitcher, which could really help. Could simulate very well with his good walks per 9 and his good stamina, could go deep into games. Honestly, both players are really good. Which player has a better chance of lasting to 80 is really the kind of decision-making process that we're going with here. And I think it's Gorzelski, and I'll tell you why that is. When you discover a player, they come in as a certain rank, right? Team rank this. And that is the same for whoever discovers them. So I know when we discovered Chip, his initial ranking was somewhere in the 40s. So there's a good chance that if someone discovered him but didn't scout him, they have him ranked somewhere in the 40s of this class. And the 40s are about to come up. So that's a good explanation as to why he wouldn't have been drafted in the first round, but could be drafted here in the second. Whereas Phil Gorzelski, when we initially discovered him, he was number 1 ranked on the board. So I feel like if somebody had discovered him, they would have taken him already, even without scouting him. A lot of times the CPU will discover a player but not scout them. And so there's really 2 rankings you have to factor in with a discovery player. What they were ranked when they were first discovered and what they were ranked when they were scouted. Because some CPUs will discover and scout them, while others will just discover and not scout them. So for that reason, because Gorzelski, I think, just has a better chance of making it to 80, with the number 40 pick in the MLB draft, the Colorado Rockies will select Chip Howe, starting pitcher who should simulate pretty dang well for us with the high walks per 9. Velocity is pretty decent as well. 4 pitch mix, throws 2 fastballs, a changeup, and a curve off of it. Has really good control there on that 2-seamer. Here at the number 80 pick, and Gorzelski is still on the board, so no drama at all with this pick. I think we're going to nail all of our top 100 picks in the class And with the 80th pick in the 2028 amateur draft, the Colorado Rockies select Phil Gorzelski, closing pitcher, 23 years old. Yes, he's old, but that's okay because he's gonna already be 79 overall at the minimum, if this is, of course, correct. And if it's not and we get burned, it was the 80th pick. You know, getting a non-star with the 80th pick is something that pretty much everybody does all the time. And so it wouldn't be anything different for this team. Here at 110, and now we're to the part of the draft where I just really don't know what to do with this class. I think we got about as good of a draft as we could have hoped for. Maybe the only thing that we could have gotten lucky is if one of the non-discovery closers lasted to 40, then this class could have really had some awesome potential. But I knew that once we got past the top 100 picks that we were going to have struggle finding somebody that we actually liked. The question here is, do we go with kind of maybe more high floor, low ceiling with Marquez or Serena Ruiz? Do we go with a high upside pitcher? Or do we take a swing at George Ho, who has at least a chance if he comes on the very high end of his ratings to be good? But ultimately, I've made my decision, and with the 110th pick in the amateur draft, the Rockies will select Max Moses. Ultimately, I made this decision because he's a lefty, and even though he's going to be a very long-term project, we don't have a lot of lefties in the organization, and the CPU loves, you know, high potential players, and he could either be a very long-term lefty for us, or he could be somebody that we include in trade packages using that potential to our advantage. Here in the 5th, it looks like one of the pitchers that we had discovered has gone, but we still have a decision between Marquez, Ho, and Mike Jones. I think round 5 is a good chance to just take a chance that somebody ends up on the high end of his ratings. So with the 140th pick in the MLB draft, the Rockies will select George Poe. Didn't scout him. Don't think he has a very good chance to be good, but if he ends up on the high end of his ratings, this will, without a doubt, be the biggest steal of the draft by a mile. I'm not confident that ends up being the case, but I'm certainly hopeful. And with the last pick in the draft, it comes down to, do we want a center fielder here in Mike Jones, who will be a really good base runner and fielder, but won't be much of an offensive player? Or do we want a pitcher that, I mean, his ranges look insane, but he could end up being a guy who even comes in, you know, high 60s, maybe even low 70s if we're lucky. And Mike Jones, both of these guys just have massive ranges. I just want to actually see if there's a better option. These are the two best players on the board. We could go with another reliever here. Instead, if we wanted to, just continue to bolster the bullpen. The best one would be Daniel Fernandez here. Really good limiting home runs here. But with our final pick, pick 170 in the MLB draft, the Colorado Rockies will select Zachary Marquez here. Just, again, kind of with our last pick. If he ends up on the high end of his ratings, it's going to be a pretty good pick. Don't feel confident that he will. But if he does, it'll be a good swing of the bat where I feel like the other players just had a lesser chance to be good. I don't think any of them have a great chance to be good, but Marquez, I feel like, had a better chance than the other options we had on the board. Ultimately, by the time it was said and done, I did like our class. I was actually really hoping that, where did he go? Ramon Serna Luis. That was the guy that I wanted in the 5th round, but I mean, we're really splitting hairs here. So for the most part, this draft went about as good as you could hope. The other thing that you would, you know, hope would happen was maybe Anthony Prado, if he could have slipped from 36 to 40, and then we could have got Howe at 80, which again would have been no sure thing. Somebody might have picked up between 40 and 80. That could have been really cool, and then we could have got Gorzelski around later too. But ultimately, not a class that I feel super confident in, but I think we did about as good as we could have in the class. It'll just come down to when we actually find out these guys' ratings, whether or not that is the case. Let's now sign our picks. In this class, we actually have quite a few guys that are below 50% to start, but they're all like in the 40s, so they shouldn't be super hard to sign in the end. Like a lot of them are just 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, periods, not weeks, away from being able to sign with us. So like, for example, if we put Blanco here and Salazar here, they'll both be ready next week to sign with us. So Not able to sign as much as I typically do in the first period, but also not really much of a problem to get these guys up to 50%. These guys are both there already. We get our first round pick to sign. We get our second pick to sign. And now we just have to wait a little bit for these last two. I'll get them signed for sure. Let's get to the draft recap screen. Taking a look at where things sit as we begin the month of August, we are still in the division lead, though the Dodgers have come up and tied us now. But if you take a look at the wild card, we're also just 2 games away from actually not even being in the playoffs altogether. An extremely tight NL race here to start the month of August. We really have no idea whether or not we're making the playoffs, but it should make the last 2 months of the season very, very fun. We've kind of blown through the beginning of this season. I think we'll slow it down a bit, whereas usually it's kind of the reverse, where we'll go slower to start the season and finish it off. That's because we're usually bad at this part of the year. So that's why we kind of end things relatively quickly. Not going to be the case this year. There's actually going to be reason to watch this team down the stretch, but I know what you're all waiting for here at the end of the episode. Let's take a look at our draft class, and here it is. Okay, so we do actually get 1 A potential. Thought we weren't going to get any A potential this year, but let's take a look pick by pick. Rico Salazar ends up 75 overall with 87 potential. That's about as good as you could have hoped for with this pick. I think he ended up really where I was hoping. Not even expecting, but I was hoping he could be 75 overall, and he comes up clutch for us. And just look, he has nothing except for bunting, which I don't give a flying hoot about, below 50 in his ratings. Just a really well-rounded skill set that I think is going to be able to play early on. Now, whose spot does he take? We'll have to see. He might be able to take some time in the minors just to figure out where he ends up coming up and playing. I think this is a very good pick, despite the fact that this is actually our first round pick that does not have a potential that we've taken here in the franchise. The fact that we got 75 overall, still high potential. And somebody who, as you can see, this team is starting to be ready to make an impact here on the league. This is going to be the guy that's going to be able to help us do that down the stretch here. And help us maybe save some money on some guys who are going to start expecting some money around the corner. Jimmy Blanco, 79 overall with 91 potential. Let's go. And I love the hits per 9. Pitcher clutch is, of course, going to take over for that, but that's not in a terrible spot either at 59. Really good at limiting home runs. You love to see that. Still a good strikeout pitcher, actually has good enough stamina that he could be a guy that you could put out there for a couple of innings. Maybe could be a guy that you could put in the long relief spot to be a multi-inning pitcher. Break is really awesome for that curveball and that slider. We probably are going to need to add a changeup to this guy's reputation. Repertoire is what I meant to say, not a reputation. But another guy, nothing below the 50s except for his stamina, but he's a bullpen arm, so does stamina even count? So 2 really good MLB ready caliber guys with good rounded skill sets. I think Blanco might honestly not even play a single inning of minor league baseball. I mean, he's already a 79, he's already 21 years old. Bring the boy up. Chip Howe also ends up in the 70s overall, so 3 straight guys, all with at least 70 overall. His weaknesses are a little bit more pronounced here. Only 36 pitcher clutch. That's unfortunate. There's no way for us to know that. But home runs per 9 being a problem is also worrisome, of course, but really good walks per 9 will help him in sim. Only 91 mile an hour fastball, which is on the low end of what it was going to be projected. Unfortunate, his 2-seam is only 1 mile an hour slower, and he's got a lot better control on it, so I'd just say go with the 2-seam at that point. But really good player, has the stamina to go deep into games when he's feeling good. 5'11", I know a lot of you don't like that MLB generates so many short pitchers. Short pitchers are a thing in baseball, but they certainly are a little bit too often generated by the game for sure. Phil Gorzelski, 80 overall with Phil Gorzelski with 88 potential. My goodness. 91 hits per 9. Strikeouts and walks are in the 70s. Home runs per 9 is at 60. Not great, but not bad. 50 control. Another guy who doesn't throw super hard, but a 92-mile-an-hour fastball, 82 changeup, 79 curve. Solid break on those pitches. Gorzelski, another guy, even more so than Blanco. I'm pretty sure Gorzelski is not going to play a single inning of MLB baseball. He's only got 8 overall to improve. He's already 80 overall. He's already 23 years old. Just put the guy up. Blanco might get a year in the minors. Might get a year just because of that ceiling being a little bit higher. He's also a couple years younger. But Gorzelski's absolutely playing Major League Baseball next year. Mac Moses, only 51 overall. That's actually kind of towards the higher end of his ranges, believe it or not. But likely just to be trade fodder, or, you know, a lefty that can come in and play for us like in the long-term simulation of this franchise. That's how long it's going to take him to come up. So not a great pick. George Poe, glad we waited to take him to the 5th, because if we had taken him early, it would have been a bust. But in the 5th round, we get a guy who's not really going to play a role in the franchise. That's kind of what you expect from a 5th round pick. Still has at least high 70s potential, so maybe could eventually be a backup player. Going to be an excellent defender by then, that's for sure. Only can play third base, which is unfortunate for him, though. Zachary Marquez, meh, he's okay. Really high stamina. He'll be a guy that can play in the minor leagues for us for his career and be at least okay. But certainly not going to be a guy that I would project to play Major League for us. But the fact that we were able to, with our first 4 picks, get guys that are all at least in the 70s overall, and with the exception of how 75 plus, all with high B potential, or low A in the case of Jimmy Blanco, ends up being about as good as I thought we could possibly do in this class. But did we miss on anybody with our number 3 overall pick? I would not be surprised if I just didn't scout somebody who was actually the best player in this class. Let's go ahead and take a look. We have Maurice Hayes coming to the Dodgers in the division. He's going to be a very good pitcher. Doesn't throw super hard, but walks and hits per 9 both in the mid-80s. Wowza. He's going to be very good. Don't know if he'll end up being like a closer, or if he'll just be a reliever, but he should be very good. The Padres did not sign their first pick, so that sucks for them. Ends up they didn't have a good draft. The Giants did not have a good draft either. Gonzalez, he's only 48 overall, so that's not going to do anything for them. Drew Vasquez, that's a solid pick. 66 overall with 84 potentials there for the Orioles. Yeah, you can't complain about this pick. Then Oliver Brito, 75 overall, but he's got his potential 13 overall less than his overall. That's actually insane. That might be the biggest gap I've ever seen. Juan Ramirez ends up being 72 overall with 89 potential. Would not have gone wrong with him. What's his durability low? 46. 46 is pretty low. It's not devastatingly low. Like, that's a couple of years away from at least being in the 50s, which that's kind of where Rafael Murillo has been sitting, and he gets banged up every year, but he hasn't, luckily, knocking on the table here, knocking on some wood. He hasn't had a major injury yet. But Juan Ramirez, gonna really be able to hit lefties pretty well. The play skills are in a pretty decent spot. Had we taken this player with that big arm and put him out in the outfield, I would have been very happy with this pick, despite the little bit lower durability with him. Ultimately, between the two, I would say, honestly, I think whichever one I would have picked, I would have been able to make the argument that that was the best pick. We have our guy's a little bit better now, 3 overall better now, but Ramirez has 2 higher potential. Very similarly good prospects. Another decent prospect here for the Yankees. Honestly, kind of like the fielding and the speed is really similar to like what a Brian Doe does, but then he's more of a contact hitter than a power hitter for Doe. Really good potential here, but he's never going to make it. A bunch of just okay picks here. We got an 87 overall, but in the 40s overall. We got decent starter here in Moreno. Not great, though. Yeah, this draft just is not good. This center fielder, Saito, isn't bad. Really, mostly just kind of speed. Play skills, though. And but this guy can really steal a base. Goodness, 96 speed and 95 still. Then they got a guy who's even better at stealing bases than Terrence Hampton. This guy's really good. This guy is, I mean, as a leadoff hitter, this is the kind of skill set I was looking for. And I probably looked at this guy, just decided that the defense was too bad to scout, which it is. It's horrible. But man, especially against lefties, 75 contact, 70 vision, 78 clutch, 60 discipline, and then 98 speed and 95 stealing. That's insane. His durability is a little bit low. But this guy is going to definitely be on the radar for trade number 3 for me. If he can, you know, because he's 64 overall, he's probably not going to get on the Guardians 40-man roster for a couple of years. Give his stuff a couple of years to develop, and if he develops well, I could absolutely see us going after a skill set of a Terrence Hampton with our 3rd trade. Great pick there by the Guardians, though, for sure. I think if I remember right, he went just before pick 35, so we would have had to take him at 3. We would have been able to take him at 35, though. I think he would have been a better pick than a closer. Maybe, though. The closers that we got are really good. Anthony Prado ends up 78 with 86 potential. So our guy ends up with a higher potential, but they're really similar now. Prado with an excellent strikeout skill set. Throws decently hard as well with a 96-mile-an-hour fastball. That control at 33, though, is ultimately what had us pick Blanco, and I'm happy with the pick. But just another sick closer in this class. What this class makes up for and everything else, you know, what it lacks in everything else, it makes up for with some awesome closers. Scott Glass is a very interesting guy. 96 potential here for the A's. Only 58 overall, but already with some decent power. It needs to develop literally everything else, though, but some decent corner outfield picks here from the Angels. Good job by them. Chris Clements, solid starting pitcher here. Low strikeouts per 9, but also low stamina for a starter, unfortunately. This guy's good now. Harvey Silva already is 75 overall. Really good vision, but not great like contact to go with it. Against lefties is pretty good. Really good fielder as well. A guy who should be able to play very early on. Just doesn't have a ton of upside. So far, I'm not finding anybody that's better than what we took at 3. Danny Parsons, here you go, 63 overall with high B potential. Solid player, terrible, and I mean terrible defender. Never going to be a decent defender. And I mean, the lefties, yeah, the contact's there, but only 61 contact. If you're giving me somebody who can't play a lick of defense, I'd want a little bit better of a leadoff skill set. Is a switch hitter, though, so that contact versus righties could absolutely come up. You train him in some play skills, you train him in some defense. Could eventually be something for you, I think. Pretty good reliever pick here, for sure. That catcher will take a million years to get good, so not great pick there. A couple of unsigned guys in Miami. Did like Diego Soto. He was actually my favorite lefty, just he didn't quite make it to where we could take him. And also his walks per 9 are terrible, so maybe not so much missing out there, only 54 overall. Yeah, this class is terrible. This class is truly terrible, my goodness. Paul Freeland, the number 2 pick in the class, does have a potential, so good job on them. But 66 overall, so not quite as MLB ready as the other guys that were taken towards the top of the class. We have Stan Colbert here. We have Julio Gomez, another 80 overall relief pitcher. My goodness, with 86 potential. Walks per 9 in the 90s off rip is absolutely insane. Strikeouts per 9 at 89 as well. That pitch clutch is a little unfortunate, but wow, what a pick. Archer Goff. Had him on our board as one of our discovery guys. Another guy just way too long term of a project. Man, what a just truly terrible class. If you're like, nah, I don't want to take a reliever in this class, then you weren't getting good players. And we're back to our pick. James Hammer ends up being a pretty good starting pitching selection for our division rival Diamondbacks. He only pitches 86 miles an hour though. So I think as far as division-wise, really it's just Maurice Hayes and maybe Will Whitley, a couple of relievers picked by the Dodgers. Not a lot of premium talent, I would say, added by our division rivals in this class. So we definitely beat them there, and I think, of course, had the best draft. that we could have had. I did not see anybody that I would 100% have taken over Rico Salazar. The only guy that's close. Oh wait, was he just not as good as he was supposed to be? We totally. Let's go. We got to go find the Nationals. Hello, Nationals. He ends up being well below his actual scouted range. Well, thank you, Nationals, for taking him at 1. He might have been the pick at 3 had he made it. He ends up being a full 6 overall, lower than his lowest projection. Dodged a bullet there. But overall, yeah, I think that catcher, Juan Ramirez, was very similar to Rico Salazar. I thought they were the 2 best players in the class. Those are the 2 players we were debating at 3. Ultimately, just there wasn't a stud position player like a future superstar in the league. Of course, Rico Salazar is going to be very good eventually, and he's already pretty good now. But I think we did about as good as we could possibly do once more. And I'm going to stop saying that I'm nervous for a draft class, because however nervous I am, we usually end up with at least a few solid picks in every one. But let me know what you think about this class. Should we have taken Juan Ramirez over Rico Salazar? Should we have taken Anthony Prado over Jimmy Blanco? I think those were really the 2 debatable picks. After that, I think we pretty much made the right pick every step of the way. And then these last 2, there was just nobody better we could have taken. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the draft class. We will be continuing the season with August, probably slowing down a little bit to see how this playoff race ends up shaking out this year. But that will be coming out soon, and I will see you then. Go Rockies!